have you ever heard of Pytheas of Massilia?
I haven't actually.
He's a character that's sort of in 300, 350 BC, sort of around the time of Alexander and a little bit after Hanno the Navigator.
Yeah.
See Historyologist podcast, episode 5, True Believers.
Hang on, click here.
So, in you can probably help me paint this picture a little bit, but it's in 350 BC, the Mediterranean. The world was mainly dominated by Phoenician traders and Carthaginians.
Yeah.
And you had little trade hubs all over the place. I didn't know this. I guess I didn't realize the Greek colonies went quite as far as they did, but obviously in the pre-Roman world, you had Greek colonies all the way up in the Black Sea. Kind of knew that, but I didn't realize they were as far as modern day France.
Yeah,
the other side of Italy.
They had something, because Marseille I think is a Greek colony, but also I think they had some even on the Atlantic coast, like in Portugal and maybe a little bit down Africa as well.
I think this story sort of tells how they get on the other side of the Iberian.
So I gave it away.
Ruined it. But it's funny when you say Marseille, because that is modern day Massilia. So Pytheas of Massilia is same place. So
so I've demonstrated an excellent knowledge of by not knowing that the two were one and the same.
And I could have been mispronouncing either of them, and I will continue to do so. I think what would we say in episode 5, Excelsior? The Hanno the Navigator, about 500 BC, part of that Phoenician trade, went out beyond the Pillars of Hercules and went around the Horn of Africa and encountered gorillas and stuff.
Yeah.
The reason we know that story is because when he came back in Carthage, it was documented on, it would have been like in one of the ports, on the wall, you've got, that Hanno on his journey.
Some story.
Yep. And the gorilla skin was preserved there for a couple hundred years as well, where people could go, just a bit of interesting.
Yeah.
And we get that story because it was translated from the Phoenician into Greek, and then Greek sources talk about it. They also think why a lot of the details in Hanno's thing don't make a lot of sense, geography-wise, is because they just wrote a bunch of bullshit in there because they knew Greek traders would see that, and they didn't want that to be used as a reference, as a step-by-step instruction on how to get to all of these other trading colonies beyond the Pillars. So when they say, we travelled 10 days in this direction, it's really...
It's like a corporate secret that they were...
That's exactly it. That's what I'm trying to keep. That's exactly it.
So they were capitalists before capitalists.
And so the Phoenicians, or the Carthaginians, they eventually became probably more Carthaginian than Phoenician. They had blockaded the Strait of Gibraltar, or the Pillars of Hercules, just like, nope, no one else is coming out here. This is our trade route.
So do you think they might have had a lot more settlements, sort of all down Africa, or up along the Atlantic coast of Portugal, Spain?
100%.
But we just don't know about them because either no one recorded it or wrote it down, or they did and that's been lost.
Yeah, 100%. Right. There's even there's stories of the Carthaginians allegedly circumnavigated all of Africa and popped back up in Arabia. Yeah. And some people say, no, they couldn't possibly have done that, but it's like, why not? If you're just following around the coast, I think that's entirely reasonable.
Yeah.
You sort of, pop back up in Arabia and Egypt, and you're like, well, I'll be damned.
Yeah.
So our hero, Pytheas, he would have grown up in all of this, as far as, he was again born in Gaul or modern day France, and, he was quite a skilled, a navigator and mathematician and astronomer.
Astronomer,
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, he would have been absolutely immersed in that whole maritime culture and stuff, and they would have also had pressure of like, well, the Phoenicians have all this stuff coming in because they've got all these established trade routes outside of the Mediterranean, whereas Greeks not so much. So I think this being right bang in the Bronze Age, and tin being a big component of making bronze. As far as the ancient world was concerned, you had tin coming down through Gaul and Germany and stuff, with trade routes they didn't quite know where the end was, and there was stuff from the east coming from what we think is probably Afghanistan and around that area now.
Yeah,
and there's a couple of other spots, but it was quite a difficult thing to get your hands on back on the day, unless you traded with the people who traded it from people further down the line.
Because it's like these ancient societies had a sphere of like knowledge, I guess, of they'd go, so we know Egypt is here, and then you got the Fertile Crescent or Mesopotamia here, and then this and that, and Italy and some of the colonies along the coast. But sort of outside of that, they knew that there were people there because they would trade with them. But then beyond those people, they would just have the people that they were talking to go, I got this from this tribe that lives even further, and it's just like story upon story upon story, but they don't really know what's there. Yeah, no,
that's 100% correct. Growing up in Massilia, a thriving Greek colony on the southern coast of Gaul, modern-day Massilia in France, Pytheas is exposed to a vibrant maritime culture as a port city. Massilia serves as a hub for all trade across, cultural exchange in the area. So it's probably, at the time, it was the furthest west colony the Greeks had. But again, you're competing a lot with the Carthaginians at that point, and they're like established all the way along the coast. And because of how travel was at that time, they're not all that far away. There'd be like less than a day's journey between each post, so you can go here to here to here to here. Pytheas develops an expertise in astronomy and navigation. His ability to measure latitudes using I've been saying this wrong all day. I read it as gnomon.
Gnomon?
Yeah, but it's probably like a nominal, something like that. It's the main part on the sundial. Right. Yeah. So it's like you can work out the latitude by sort of the angle of the sun and how the shadow comes off that. Pytheas here, he measured the latitude with his gnomon from Massilia before he left, right? And then at some point, I think around about Scotland or whatever, and he's sort of taken a measurement from there. Now, he couldn't work out the exact, whereabouts on the globe it was with just that bit of information, but somebody a couple of hundred years later, with his measurement from the British Isles, put that into the I think the calculator. Put that, like, because if you roughly, if you know the size of the Earth and you know the distance where the sun's sitting in the sky, and when the summer solstice, the highest point of the year is, you can work out exactly where that is in the globe. And this Greek fella, a couple of hundred years later, worked it out with the number from Pytheas's book to like point something of a degree off. So it was like bang on. Yeah. Which is bloody remarkable, to be honest.
Yeah, I know.
I would not have worked that out personally. Yeah, so, the legacy of earlier Greek explorers such as Herodotus's account of distant lands and the circumnavigation of Africa by Phoenicians, which is Hanno the Navigator. I like to think that, Pytheas in his angsty teenager, and he's got like pictures of his heroes on the wall, and he's like, shut up, mum, you never get me. And he's just like, looks up to, he's got a little poster of Pytheas, Hanno on the wall with his gorillas, and he's just like, one day I'm going to grow up just like you. Yeah. And he's just like, oh, show him.
It's actually, I know you, a bit of a joke, but it's funny how so many people in the ancient world, they had heroes in the same way that we would have, like look up to an actor or a rock star or something and be like, Like, you know,
100%.
like Alexander the Great supposedly went to bed with a copy of the Iliad tucked under his pillow, and he's reading and he's like, yeah, Achilles, like, yeah, that's my boy.
That's me. That's you know, that's my North Star and my moral compass.
Yeah, and you know, a lot of the Romans would read about Alexander or whoever and just and be like, yeah, I'm gonna be as great as him.
Well, and you know, you're probably referencing this, but you know, there's that famous one with Julius Caesar, and he's like 40 or 42 or something like that, and he's like lamenting at the foot of the statue of Alexander, being like, "Woohoo!
I've achieved nothing.
I've achieved nothing." You know,
I'm only one of the richest, wealthiest people in Rome, and I've done nothing.
It's just not good enough. Yeah, at the time, one of the other motivations for the journey could have been amber, which was, pretty freaking useless as far as we're concerned. But in the Mediterranean, it was quite a prized thing because it's like part of like fossilized amber, or tree sap.
Yeah,
creates amber, and you know, you'd make jewelry out of it. And I think, you know, I know Greek women were really into it for a while. It was quite fashionable to have amber sort of jewelry in that. I'm guessing that comes from an early tradition, like the Greeks probably had a thing for it. But
so were they? It sounds like they were making these kind of journeys for economic reasons rather than for just I wanted to see what's over there.
Pretty much. I'd say a lot of the people that I've sort of read, they will say that like, oh, it's following in the tradition of Greek exploration and scientific discovery and stuff, and perhaps there was a motivation for like, you know, mercantile, you know, and I probably think that was the main motivator, and the scientific expeditions were the sort of like a secondary factor, but whatever. And also because the Phoenicians are the only ones bringing it back through the Pillars of Hercules, and they're like, well, they've got a source for all this stuff. Otherwise, we have to wait for, you know, Gaul-ish barbarian, not non-Greeks, barbar, you know, barbar sounding.
Well, they were the barbarians.
They were.
You know, they
Literally. Non-Greeks.
Yeah, non-Greeks. did they have, you know, did they have a Parthenon?
Who knows?
Barbarian.
Oh yeah, it's like Pytheas to explore and document these trade routes for commercial benefits. Yeah. There's also, I've got a little note here about it's like this was probably also possible because of the rise of Alexander the Great's empire, and it created a period of relative stability in the Greek world. Yeah, I think you're giving a lot of credit to Alexander. I think that could have been happening under Philip II as well. I don't know if Alexander had a whole bunch of sweeping reforms apart from no more Thebes when he came in. It was more he sort of stepped into.
But I think his primary aim was just to put down any revolt and make sure that no one thought about revolting in the future.
While I go that way.
Yeah, while I'm away from home for the next 10 years. Just
never to return. Spoiler alert. Pytheas, he gets his ship, he gathers a crew, and he sets out to explore the unknown, aiming to document the geography, the peoples, and natural phenomena of the northern world. In all of my research, which was not much.
Yeah. We are a poorly researched history.
Just to stay in the spirit of what we're doing.
How many Wikipedia articles did you read?
Well, who needs Wikipedia when you've got AI? So in the stuff I was reading, it was always a journey outside beyond the Pillars of Hercules, and then I was listening to something on the way here that was like, well, it was pretty unlikely that he journeyed through the Pillars of Hercules and stuff because there was a Phoenician blockade that stopped anyone from going out there unless you were like Carthaginian or whatever. So it's actually more likely that he navigated up the sort of the rivers in France and then popped out on the other side of the Atlantic. I'm going to disregard that because that's not as exciting.
Not as exciting, and it sounds like there's more work involved to justify that position. Whereas
we can do like him and his boys got
just
together. Sailed out.
Made a deal. The Carthaginians were like, hey, you can't get through it. And they were like, yeah, but what if we could? And then they're like, good point, off you go.
Valid. So Pytheas sets sail from Massilia's port to navigate westward through the Mediterranean. As a Greek mariner, he relied on coastal navigation techniques and possibly a small crew using a single-masted vessel suited for long-distance travel. So leaving the Mediterranean, which is a tideless sea, round, Pillars of Hercules, or so you get out there into the Atlantic, and then all of a sudden, what's this? At different times of day, the water's at different heights, and waves. Well,
yeah, it's a different beast.
It is a bit of a different beast. So as he explored the Iberian west coast, he sailed north along the Iberian Peninsula, documenting coastal geography and encountering the local tribes, possibly the Tartanesians or early Celtic groups. He noted resources like tin on his journey. Continuing north, Pytheas explores the coast of Gaul, which is modern-day France. Observing more Celtic settlements and maritime activities, he likely interacted with local traders and gathering information on northern trading networks. So they knew the British Isles were there, vaguely speaking, and then the more you get across, and especially, I guess, what will be, you get into around modern day, like Normandy kind of area, you'd be running into fellas that are actually just going across the channel all the time.
Would it be similar to, say, their knowledge of ancient China, where they knew that there was something over there, and that they, silk or whatever came from over there, and that they would speak to these, Persians who would say, we talk to them, or Alexander gets all the way to India, and it's like, he must have heard stories of, there's this other stuff, but they never had any sort of direct contact, or 100%. Didn't really know anything about it other than, this valuable thing comes from there.
And even you get these interesting things as well, where so he'd be able to talk to, the Gauls in southern France. And so you probably more than likely, I could just be making this up, but I would say that he probably had brought in an interpreter with him, and so when you get to northern France, your interpreter from southern France probably still able to communicate with the other Gallic tribes there. As you start heading north, the barbarians start getting more barbarous.
The beards get longer.
The beards get longer, more ba sounds. It's just like savage. And there's the sort of mention of Caesar makes a similar observation as well. Just the boats are different. You've got more flat bottomed ships, so you can easily get them off the out of the water and drag them onto, because you can't really put them at anchor. The bow, stern, and everything's a little bit higher because you have to deal with waves and that. It's not just everyone having fun in the Mediterranean. He arrives in the Cassideres, I can't even pronounce that, but basically translates to the Tin Islands, identified as the Sicily Isles, but it's basically Cornwall, which is in modern day Britain, where he observes tin mining and trade, and he describes the process of extracting and transporting tin. So he arrives in Cornwall, meets these barbarians, and they're doing their things, or doing their thing, and they're mining tin out of ribbons of tin, sort of in a cliff face and stuff. And then these guys would take it down, and then they get the impurities out of it and smash it into about a knuckle bone sort of size. And then all of this stuff's really documented. It's really cool. So then those guys take the little knuckle bone sized bits of tin ingot to what they think is probably the Isle of Man, something like that, which then Gallic and traders sort of take it from there across the channel, and then from that point it makes it across Spain, or gets traded with Phoenicians on the other side. So you all of a sudden they're like, boom, this is where all the tin comes from. Pretty cool to think, actually. It's a very well organised sort of little system. Pytheas lands in Britain, which he names the Britannic, and explores its southern and eastern coast. He documents the Celtic inhabitants' customs, including their agriculture, social structures, and the use of chariots, which he thought was quite quaint because they weren't using chariots anymore. They're like, oh, that's cute.
No, the Egyptians used them back in the day, but I think they're very, horseback.
Yeah.
Warfare was much quicker and easier, and chariots you had to
like level the ground first.
Yeah.
I think the idea with the chariots and that, why you see them more ancient antiquity as opposed to, well, just antiquity in general, and why it seems so quaint is, I think it actually speaks of a time where horses weren't quite bred big enough for people to ride, so they were used as a labour thing, and to pull chariots, and that worked. Yeah. So 2 horses to a chariot or whatever, and then. Eventually you get your Scythians and other sort of steppe peoples coming in riding the horse, and they're like, that's a much better idea.
Yeah, and it's a different skill to ride a horse bareback or with the saddle. I know saddles were, invented or developed along the way.
Like the technology has improved, like stirrups. You think like, what difference does that make? And it's like, well, huge difference, because all of a sudden you're locked in and you can put your whole weight behind whatever, and it's why the French cavalry was so crazy good for so long.
Maybe it was just easier for them, the Celts to, instead of riding a horse, just hook them up to the chariot.
Hook them up, and there was another detail I was going to mention as well. The people of Bretonnici, or from Britannia, they referred to the island as Albion, whereas Pytheas is like, no, you're the Britannia. This is Britannia.
You idiots.
Because I think Brittany or to describe the people roughly translates to painted men or tattooed men. And so they're like, yeah, this is Albion. And he's like, no,
you fools.
This is Britannia, and you're the, Which is funny, because I think that is actually where the word Britain comes from today, which is great, that it just comes back to a dude who's like, yeah, we're this, and you're like, no, you're not. And then 3,000 years later, like, yeah, we're Britons. It's like,
we've been saying that from the start.
Our idea. So in Britain, Pytheas notes the dramatic rise and fall of the tides. Unfamiliar to the Mediterranean Greeks, he astutely connects the tidal movements.
So he gets all the way to Britain. He goes, maybe this is like back to the river thing. Like he goes all the way up the Atlantic coast to Britain. He gets here and he goes, what's all this tidal business? I've just noticed it just now.
It's like, upon reflection, there's a phenomenon here that I haven't addressed.
He's just gone to shore and left shore at exactly the same tide each time.
Sometimes history lies. He astutely connects the tidal movements to the lunar cycle, which is pretty cool, to be perfectly honest. Because that's
he's spot on.
I mean, I'm guessing that it wasn't like, he rocks up and he's like, oh, this must be over a couple of months. He's like, oh, when the full moon's, this is. I'm guessing it wasn't like it came to him all at once. It was a couple of months of like, oh snap! I bet those two things are connected.
Yeah.
Okay. Nice. Some sources suggest that Pytheas may have sailed around all the way around Britain, and he estimated the circumference to be about 4,000 miles, which is pretty dead on. I don't have the exact number, but my note says...
It's pretty dead on. I don't know how big Britain is, but it's dead on.
It's close to modern calculations.
It's a good note.
He described the island's triangular shape and its position relative to the continent. So it's like, okay. Yeah, he's just running into more barbarians. The further he gets...
There's no Greeks there.
There are no Greeks.
Except him.
Like, so this is what it's like to be the last civilized man. So Pytheas pushed further north, reaching a mysterious land he calls Thule, possibly Iceland, Norway, or maybe even the Shetland Islands. He described a region where the sun never fully sets during the summer. The midnight sun is pretty cool.
Yeah.
And mind-blowing. Can you imagine?
But yeah, it'd be pretty... I mean, obviously it's in the Arctic Circle. If what he says is true, or maybe someone told him that story, and then he goes, "Oh yeah, that's interesting." I guess the peoples in the Arctic Circle, even more so than any of the Celts in Britain or northern France or whatever, you'd have less contact with them. So for someone from the Mediterranean, where it's nice and warm and sunny and all that, and then you go to a place where the sun never sets, it must be pretty amazing.
Well, so your whole worldview would be like, it's like, so why does the sun set every evening and rise every morning? And it's like,
Apollo.
Yeah, because Apollo in his sky chariot pulls the sun along and then goes into the underworld and then pulls the sun back out every morning. It's like, obviously, you fucking idiot, and you get up to like, right in the Arctic and that, and you're just like, no Apollo.
Yeah, maybe he's lazy up there.
He's just a bit lazy further up north. Yeah, so the sun never fully sets during the summer, and the sea appears to congeal, likely referring to sea ice or slush near the Arctic Circle.
Right. Yeah.
Which makes
sense.
Pretty cool.
But if he's there in summer,
I assume the whole journey took a couple of years.
Right. Yeah.
I was reading something that was like, yeah, you could have done it in a couple of months. I'm like, no, I don't know. No, I don't know. I'm going to do a little editorial here.
That's what historyology is about.
Yeah.
you read a history and go, I don't like that. I'll just put what I think it should be.
His favourite colour was blue. I'll jump ahead a little bit. So he survives his journey.
Okay, that's good.
He comes back, and when he comes back, he writes a book.
Does he come back to a hero's welcome?
Not really. No. Which is pretty funny, actually. He basically comes back to everyone going, bullshit. we only sort of have, like, I think the second hand and third hand sort of accounts of his journey, because his book, The Ocean, titled The Ocean.
Yeah, pretty expensive book.
Yeah, it doesn't actually exist anymore. We've got a bunch of, like, you got Strabo and a couple of people
quoting it
and referencing little excerpts and stuff. But I have the surviving quote from Pytheas, who's saved for us by Gemini of Rhodes, who mentioned it in one of his writings or whatever. Pytheas of Massilia says that the barbarians showed us to the place where the sun goes to rest, for it was the case that in those parts the night was very short, in some places 2 hours, in others 3 hours long, so the sun rose again a short time after it set. There's just little voice popping up from history, like, little quote. I love it. And I got two quotes that I don't have. So that first one, definitely, I think it's real. These second two, I don't know. The last of those mentioned is full, whereas I have said there are no nights during the solstice when the sun is passing through the sign of Cancer, and also no days during the winter solstice. Some believe this to be true for 6 continuous months. Whether neither earth, water, nor air existed separately, but a sort of concentration of all of these resembling a sea lung in which the earth, the sea, and all things were suspended, thus forming, as it were, a link to unite the whole together. So that last one, he's kind of talking about, whether the water, he's got slushy ice, the air is really foggy, so you've got water in there. So he's kind of in that Greek thought of the world is made up of these elements.
Yeah, the four, because that was one of the theory or the big theories at the time.
The wind, water. It's like Captain Planet, you know.
Yeah, it was Captain Planet.
Heart. So it was just kind of like, using that thought, he's arrived on a place where it's like, cool. So this is where all the elements kind of come together.
Yeah.
Which I can see what you think that is wrong though.
It was wrong.
He's made some astronomical observations. Pytheas observed unique celestial phenomena, including polar constellations, which obviously, how freaky would it be? Like your entire world, like it's a bit different now, but like you're in the Mediterranean, there is a night sky and a North Star and all that sort of thing. And then all of a sudden, I mean, you like explorers, you know, thousands of years later arriving in Australia in that and being like, having a completely different night sky.
I think it'd be more startling for someone in the ancient world because, I know for us, you look at this, and I know we know more about how it works and all that, but you look at the sky and you go, wow, stars and pretty, and then, you know, I know you've never been to Europe, but you go up to the northern hemisphere, and you go, wow, stars, pretty, cool. But you know, it's just stars. But it's, I guess, someone that was like, oh, and that's that constellation, and that's this, and then they go somewhere totally different, and it's like, where's that constellation? And everything is totally different.
Oh shit. Well, I mean, even like, you know, when people were arriving in Australia and that, and they've gone like, oh crap, so, you know, Southern Hemisphere, antipodes of the world, and you're like, Southern Cross, Jesus Christ, but good, you know. And then you get this, like, and that's like, you look at the Australian flag, and it's like, how many times can you put like a crucifixion, like a Jesus reference on a flag, right? Where you got the St. George's Cross, you got the Scottish one, you got the Welsh one, it's sort of stacked on top. So that's 3 images depicting the crucifixion, right? Then you get the Southern Cross as well.
Yeah. It's a lot. They really love Jesus.
Of course, this was before Jesus. So he's popped about, he's observed his midnight sun, he's sailed, you know, where, you know, you've got pack ice, or, you know, he starts, which to be a Mediterranean mind must be like, anyway, so he's collected all his information, he's found, you know, he's interacted with Germanic tribes along the, you know, coast, and like the, I think he referred to it as the Amber Coast. So he's found where the tin comes from, he's found where the amber comes from, he's found the end of the world, and where the sun doesn't set. So he's like, you know what, I'm gonna, you know,
good time to turn back.
A good time to turn back, because after his northern explorations, Pytheas retraces his route south along the Atlantic coast of Gaul and Iberia, navigating, you know, challenging currents and weathers to return to the Mediterranean. Once Pytheas arrives back in Massilia after years of travel, he compiles his observations into his book on the ocean, or the ocean. A detailed work combining geography, astronomy, and ethnography. So he's saying, oh, those people look different over there.
That's right. I'm observing.
I'm observing. And I think there was a copy in Alexandria and a bunch of the old ancient libraries, because there's a lot of people who have sort of referenced it later. Pytheas, when he returned, shared his findings with the Greek world and his accounts of distant lands, tides, the midnight sun. The tin, people thought was very interesting. Amber, very interesting. Kind of came back to a bit of ridicule, and people going, no, you didn't.
Midnight
Bullshit.
Sun. Come on.
Midnight sun? So you mean, what, the sun doesn't set? Oh, frozen ocean? Okay, sure, buddy.
Yeah.
Sure. In fact, a lot of people would argue that, no, despite the fact we know the Phoenicians go out there, the world actually ends at the Pillars of Hercules. So I think Strabo, there's a bit of irony as well, because Strabo and Pliny the Elder, they're 2 of the sources we've got, the most intact ones for Pytheas' journey. They wrote about it to discredit him,
right?
Because it was obvious bullshit.
Not a fan.
Yeah, not a fan. Even like the quote and stuff I put up earlier, the most of the information we have of Pytheas are from those gentlemen just going, nah, that's not true, he's the liar, the worst kind of liar, you know. And, you know, it's like 100 years after the fact, just going, no, bullshit. Which is fantastic. But, as I said earlier, there was a mathematician a couple 100 years later that used his things and worked, it was pretty much exactly where the British Isles were. And, you know, later in, what was it, like 50 or 30 something BC, Caesar, you know, and he pops across the channel, he's likely referencing Pytheas's work.
Yeah.
A lot of the Roman sort of knowledge and stuff and shape of the island, even before Caesar got there, it was included on maps, and that was all information that Pytheas sort of left behind.
So they were kind of like, this guy is obviously wrong, and he's an idiot, and he's way off.
Yep.
But we also don't have anything else on the area, so we're just going to use it until more information comes.
Until more information comes out. So it doesn't really say anything about the latter part of Pytheas's life and his journey when he came back. That's where we get to add a little bit of colour, and so he was mocked and ridiculed as a liar and pilloried,
tarred and feathered
for the rest of his life as, not being a truther.
He was spreading that bit of that fake news.
So yeah, I just think it's Pythias's journeys in the same way as Hanno, and that it's just cool. There's a lot of I love apart from the adventure and the what's over there, and just have no way of knowing, balls on it, and just arriving on an alien planet, and not necessarily knowing, we'll say give credit where credit's due. They probably roughly knew how big the Earth was, and that was circle, because you worked that shit out with shadows and all those we were talking about earlier. But I'm you're just setting off to a new area, and all of a sudden it's cold, and being in the Mediterranean and then arriving in the Arctic Circle. You know what I mean?
It's kind of hard for us to imagine as well, because we have all this satellite imagery and the world's fully mapped, and even if whenever it happens, people go on a manned mission to Mars. And no one's ever been there, completely different planet, but it's still
mapped it.
It's still mapped, and you can still, and there's a thing, the rover there, and you can have a look what it's like, and all that kind of stuff. But these guys knew nothing,
nothing at all. I mean,
and even if they did know something of an area, and it's let's just say they're reading the Hanno Travels, and it tells you about it. There were gorillas, and there was this, and there was that, but it's doesn't really tell you that much about it.
Not at all. Even with the Hanno thing, it's and on this day, all of a sudden, there was fire erupting out of the sky and a river of fire that flowed into the ocean. And they're and this is the chariot of the gods. And it's well, no, I've just run into a volcano.
Yeah.
But they're on the coast going, whoa! Fuck. Yeah. What the hell is that?
It's funny that they were it's a mountain of fire. And, I mean, they must have known about volcanoes.
Must have,
and I'd like to say, on Sicily, which is not far away, it used to be Carthaginian territory as well. There's a huge volcano there.
Yeah.
And it erupts all the time, constantly. So it mustn't be is that the chariot of the gods as well?
But maybe that one was just it was just bigger than the one on Sicily. They're well, no, this is the chariot of the gods. That one, that's yesterday's chariot.
Pythias of
Massilia
made it all the way to Britain and back.
Yeah.
What a journey.
What a journey. Named the place, despite of what they'd already called named it.
They came around, though.
So this is Albion.
They came around. Took them a couple of thousand years, but they got there.